Somewhere in the humid jungles of New Guinea, 1943, a metal corpse lies rotting under the equatorial sun. Fuselage riddled with holes, engines seized, wiring torn. This Boeing B-17E bomber has been written off, condemned, forgotten. The ground crews call it cursed. Serial number 41-2666. Old 666. Every crew that flew her came back broken, if they came back at all. Now she sits in the aircraft graveyard, waiting to be stripped for parts. But across the same airfield, a different kind of outcast watches her with hungry eyes. Captain J. Zemer Jr., renegade pilot, brilliant photographer, leader of a crew so unorthodox they've been blacklisted from official missions. His men, the eager beavers, misfits, troublemakers, specialists too dangerous or too independent for regular squadrons. They see what others cannot. Where the Air Force sees a jinxed wreck, Zemer sees potential. Where regulations see scrap metal, he sees a weapon. And in the brutal mathematics of the Pacific theater, where American bombers fall like rain under Japanese interceptors, he sees their only chance of survival. The castaways are about to claim the cursed, and together they will fly into a storm that will either prove the legend true or forge a new one entirely. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress earned its name through brute force and redundancy. By 1943, it was the backbone of American strategic operations, a 4-engine heavy bomber designed to absorb punishment, maintain formation, and deliver its payload no matter the cost. Standard defensive setup, 13 50 caliber heavy weapons positioned in turrets, waist windows, and the tail. Crew of 10, maximum speed, roughly 287 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. Its philosophy was simple: strength in numbers, overlapping fields of protection, mutual defense. But the Pacific theater was not Europe. Here, formations were smaller, distances incomprehensible, and the enemy, the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service, fielded some of the most maneuverable fighters ever built. The Mitsubishi A6M0 could turn inside an American fighter's turning radius, climb faster, and strike with devastating precision. Japanese pilots were not merely trained, they were cultivated, many with thousands of hours of combat experience over China before the war even began. They hunted in packs, exploited blind spots, and showed no hesitation. For the Americans stationed in New Guinea, survival was not guaranteed by doctrine. It was earned through adaptation, improvisation, and occasionally outright rebellion against standard operating procedures. Captain J. Zemer Jr. understood this better than most. A Yale graduate with an engineering mind trapped in a warrior's body, he had been repeatedly denied his own crew for being, quote, too independent, so he built one anyway. From the misfits, the passed over, the specialists no one else wanted, photographer, bombardier, gunners with unorthodox methods. And now, they had found their chariot. The aircraft graveyard at Port Moresby stank of fuel, rust, and defeat. Rows of wounded bombers sat baking in the tropical heat, wings shredded, tail sections blown away, cockpits stained with the evidence of violent combat. Mechanics moved between them like surgeons in a field hospital, harvesting parts from the irreparable to keep the living airborne. This was the mathematics of attrition. For every bomber that flew, 2 others donated their lungs, their bones, their beating hearts. Old 666 sat at the far end, untouched. No one wanted her parts. No one wanted her proximity. Serial number 41-2666. An unfortunate combination that superstitious crews read as an omen. She had been damaged heavily over Rabaul, limped back with 1 engine out and half her crew wounded, then been hit again over Ley. Her 3rd mission ended with a crash landing that sheared off her landing gear. The official report listed her as, quote, beyond economical repair. Captain J. Zemer saw her on a Thursday. By Friday, he had assembled his crew in front of her. Gentlemen, he said, running his hand along a hole in the fuselage, I present our new office. Staff Sergeant Joseph Sanowski, bombardier and nose gunner, walked a slow circle around the aircraft. He was built like a boxer, compact and powerful, with the calm eyes of a man who had already made peace with his own mortality. Sir, he said carefully, she's got more holes than a screen door. So then we patch them, Zemer replied. Technical Sergeant Forrest Dillman, the engineer, climbed into the bomb bay and emerged shaking his head. Hydraulics are gone, electrical systems half melted, and I'm pretty sure something died in the radio compartment. So we rebuild her, Ziemer said. From the ground up, not to Air Force specifications, to ours. And that was the beginning. For 3 weeks, the eager beavers worked in secret, scavenging parts from across the airfield. They pulled engines from a crashed B-17C, newer, more powerful Wright R-182. O-90s that gave her an edge in speed and climb rate. They stripped nearly 2,000 pounds of unnecessary equipment, armor plating from non-critical areas, redundant oxygen bottles, even some of the radio gear they deemed excessive. Weight was speed, and speed was life. But their most radical modifications involved firepower. The standard B-17E carried 1350 caliber Browning heavy weapons. Ziemer looked at that number and saw inadequacy. He had studied Japanese tactics, watched how Zeros exploited the blind spots beneath the nose, how they made slashing attacks from 12 o'clock high where the forward defenses couldn't elevate enough. So he added and added and added. 2 additional positions in the nose, 2 in the waist windows where there had been one, a twin mount in the radio compartment roof, extra ammunition cans, extended belts, modified feed mechanisms. When they were finished, Old 666 bristled with 19 heavy defensive positions, a 60% increase in firepower over standard configuration. And then came Ziemer's masterstroke. He installed a fixed 50 caliber forward-facing position in the nose, aimed straight ahead, wired directly to a trigger on his control yoke. A bomber pilot with a fighter's capability. It was unheard of, possibly against regulations, and absolutely brilliant. If a Zero came head-on, Ziemer could respond while maintaining control of the aircraft. Sergeant Sarnowski tested the nose positions, traversing them through their range. "Captain," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face, "we're not a bomber anymore." "No," Ziemer agreed. "We're a gunship." They painted her nose with a grinning demon, embraced the number 666 rather than feared it, dared the curse to follow them. 400 miles to the north, on the Japanese-held island of Bougainville, another preparation was underway. Lieutenant Commander Yoshio Fukui stood in the operations tent, studying reconnaissance photographs of American air activity over the Solomon Islands. A 20-year veteran of naval aviation, Fukui had flown combat missions over China, Indochina, and the Dutch East Indies. He understood Americans, their tactics, their weaknesses, their fatal adherence to predictable patterns. "They will come again," he told his assembled pilots. Their photo reconnaissance missions follow a schedule. Every 7 to 10 days, a single bomber, sometimes escorted, sometimes alone. They photograph our airfields, our harbors, our defenses, and then they leave. 23 pilots sat before him, most in their early 20s, all veterans of at least a dozen combat engagements. They flew the A6M Model 220, the latest variant of the legendary Zero fighter. Empty weight, just over 4,000 pounds. Maximum speed, 350 miles per hour. Armament, 2 20mm cannons in the wings, 2 7.7mm forward positions in the nose. In the hands of a skilled pilot, it was a scalpel. And these were very skilled pilots. "The Americans believe their flying fortresses are invincible," Fukui continued. "They believe that tight formation and overlapping defensive coverage will protect them. But a lone bomber," he tapped the reconnaissance photo, "is just a target with delusions." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Takeo Shibata, raised a hand. "What if they send fighters?" "Then we outnumber them," Fukui replied. "I am assembling a standing patrol of 20 aircraft, 18 Zeros, 2 Kawasaki Ki-61 Tonys for high-altitude intercept. We will maintain rotating coverage over our most sensitive installations. The moment an American reconnaissance aircraft appears, we will be waiting." The strategy was sound. American photo reconnaissance missions were vital to planning operations, tracking Japanese ship movements, and updating intelligence, but they were also predictable. Same altitudes, same approaches, same routes. And in the vast emptiness of the Pacific, a lone bomber was desperately vulnerable. Fukui's pilots had refined their tactics through bitter experience. The standard attack profile involved diving passes from above and ahead, exploiting the bomber's weakest defensive arc. The lead fighters would draw a defensive response while the second wave attacked from different angles, fragmenting the gunner's attention. If possible, they targeted engines first. A smoking engine often meant mission abort, but if the bomber pressed on, Then they went for the cockpit, the bombardier, the men who made decisions. Remember, Fukui said, these aircraft are heavily defended but fundamentally limited in maneuverability. They cannot turn like we can. They cannot climb like we can. Their only advantages are armor and concentrated firepower, so we do not linger in their sights. Slash attacks, high-speed passes, make them bleed slowly. He paused, looking each pilot in the eye. And if you see a lone bomber over Bougainville, do not assume it is helpless. The Americans are learning, they are adapting. Respect the machine, but never fear it. The pilots bowed in acknowledgement. Outside, mechanics were preparing the Zeros, loading 20mm high-explosive rounds into the wing cannons, belting 7.7 ammunition for the nose positions. Each aircraft carried enough firepower for roughly 7 seconds of sustained engagement, which meant every burst had to count. Japanese doctrine emphasized marksmanship over volume. One well-placed burst could cripple an engine, 2 could bring down a bomber. Lieutenant Shibata walked to his aircraft, running his hand along the wing. His Zero, tail number J117, had 17 small American flags painted beneath the cockpit, 17 confirmed victories. He had flown in China, at Pearl Harbor, and across the South Pacific. June 16, 1943, 0400 hours. Captain J. Zemer stood in the pre-dawn darkness at Port Moresby, reviewing the mission briefing one final time. The assignment was straightforward on paper. Solo photographic reconnaissance of Japanese installations on Bougainville, specifically the airfields at Buka and Bonis. Intelligence needed updated imagery to assess enemy fighter strength before a planned operation. Expected opposition? Moderate. Estimated mission duration? 8 hours. Probability of contact? High. Solo, Sergeant Sarnowski repeated, cinching his flight harness. No fighter escort, no other bombers, just us. They don't have fighters to spare for a recon mission, Zemer replied. And we're faster than a standard B-17. We'll be fine. That's what the other 6 crews said, Technical Sergeant Dillman muttered. The ones who didn't come back. Zemer looked at his engineer. We're not flying a standard B-17. At 0530, Old 666 lifted off into the tropical darkness, her 19 defensive positions glinting in the airfield lights. The crew settled into their stations. Zemer and Britton in the cockpit, Sarnowski in the nose with his cameras and forward defenses, Dillman at the engineer's station, gunners in the waist, tail, and ball turret. The bomber climbed to 20,000 feet, heading northwest over the Solomon Sea. The sun rose behind them, painting the ocean gold and crimson. 4 hours into the flight, they reached Bougainville. The island stretched below like a green scar, jungle-covered mountains rising from coastal plains. Zemer could see the airfields clearly, neat geometric patterns carved into the wilderness, revetments for aircraft, supply dumps, defensive positions. He began his photo run, flying straight and level, while Sarnowski worked the cameras, capturing frame after frame of tactical intelligence. Below, air raid sirens began to wail. "Flak!" Britton called, pointing at black puffs of smoke appearing around them. Anti-aircraft bursts. 37mm, 88mm, clusters of fragments blossoming at their altitude. Zemer adjusted course slightly, but maintained the photo run. The mission required complete coverage. Evasive maneuvers would create gaps in the imagery. Sarnowski was focused on his viewfinder, adjusting exposure and focus. 30 seconds more. 20. Got it. Photo run complete. Turning for home, Zemer announced, banking the bomber into a wide arc. That's when the call came from the tail gunner, Staff Sergeant J. Moore's voice, flat and professional. Bandits, 6 o'clock high. Multiple contacts. Estimate, Jesus. 15, maybe 20 fighters. Zemer's hands tightened on the yoke. 20 fighters. Positions, everyone, he ordered. Gunners, watch your sectors. Call out targets before you engage. Bombardier, you've got forward defense. Engineer, monitor the engines. Co-pilot, damage control. Through the cockpit glass, he saw them coming. A swarm of dark specks growing rapidly larger. Zeros. Their distinctive silhouettes unmistakable. They were climbing, spreading into attack formation, setting up for a high-side pass. Zemer counted them. 18, 19, 20 aircraft. More than he'd ever seen concentrated on a single bomber. They really don't want us leaving, Sarnowski observed, charging his forward positions. The Japanese formation split. Half continued climbing, moving to attack from 12 o'clock high. The other half peeled off for flank attacks, exploiting the waist gun sectors. Classic tactics. fragment the defense, overwhelm the gunners with multiple threat vectors. The first burst of 20mm cannon rounds walked across Old 666's left wing, punching fist-sized holes in the aluminum skin. Tracer rounds drew bright lines through the air, converging from multiple angles. The bomber shuddered as rounds impacted the fuselage, tail, and engines. "And then," she responded, 1950 caliber defensive positions opened up simultaneously. The sound was apocalyptic, a sustained roar like tearing metal, spent casings cascading through the interior, gun smoke filling the cabin. From the nose, Sarnowski engaged in controlled bursts, walking his tracers toward the lead zero. From the waist, gunners Sergeant William Vaughn and Sergeant Herbert Pugh swung their positions in tight arcs, tracking targets. From the tail, Sergeant Moore engaged constantly, forcing attackers to break off their runs. And from the cockpit, Ziemer saw a zero lining up dead ahead, closing for a head-on pass. He pressed the trigger on his control yoke. The fixed nose position opened up, tracers reaching out like a bright finger. The Zero pilot, not expecting forward response from a bomber's nose, held his course a fraction too long. 50 caliber rounds stitched across his cowling, engine, and cockpit. Smoke burst from the fighter's engine. It rolled inverted and dove away, trailing dark streaks. "First contact!" Britain shouted. But there were 19 more. The Zeros attacked in waves, diving from altitude, engaging in bursts, then climbing away before the defensive response could track them effectively. Their tactics were textbook: never linger, never give the gunners an easy shot, bleed the bomber slowly. But Old 666 was not a textbook bomber. Her firepower was so concentrated, so overlapping, that the Zeros found no safe approach angle. Every attack run met a wall of tracers. Sarnowski in the nose was a machine, engaging, clearing jams, reloading, engaging again. A Zero came in low, trying to rake the bomber's belly. Sarnowski dropped his aim, leading the target, and squeezed off a long burst. The Zero's canopy shattered, the fighter snap-rolled and fell away. "Two!" Sarnowski called over the intercom. But the Japanese were relentless. A pair of Zeros coordinated an attack from opposite sides, forcing the waist gunners to split their attention. One got through, raking the fuselage with cannon rounds. An explosive shell detonated inside the radio compartment, shredding equipment and starting a small fire. Dillman grabbed an extinguisher, choking on smoke. "Fire in the radio room, under control," he reported. Another Zero made a high-side pass, rolling inverted to engage down into the bomber. Sergeant Moore in the tail tracked him perfectly, sending a sustained burst that caught the fighter in the wing root. The Zero staggered, trailing fuel, and broke away. Time became elastic, measured in bursts of defensive fire and near misses. 5 minutes felt like 50, 10 minutes felt like forever. The Zeros kept coming, kept attacking, kept falling. Ziemer flew the bomber in a shallow weaving pattern, never turning hard enough to lose speed, but never flying straight long enough to become an easy target. His instrument panel showed damage accumulating. Oil pressure dropping in the number 3 engine, hydraulic pressure fluctuating, fuel gauges reading lower than they should. Rounds had punctured tanks, severed lines, damaged controls. But the bomber kept flying. 20 minutes into the engagement, a Zero pilot got smart. Instead of attacking from above or the sides, he dove below and pulled up sharply, engaging upward into the bomber's belly, the one sector where defensive coverage was weakest. His cannon rounds found their mark. One explosive shell detonated in the nose compartment. Sergeant Sarnowski was thrown backward by the blast, a massive wound opening in his side. He struggled to his feet, vision graying, and grabbed his position again. "Sarnowski's hit," Ziemer heard over the intercom. "It's bad." Fall back, Sergeant," Ziemer ordered. "Get to the radio room, get first aid." "Negative, sir." Sarnowski's voice was wet, labored. "Still, got shooters up here." And he kept engaging. Another Zero came in head-on. Sarnowski tracked it, fingers slippery with his own injury, and responded. The return flight was a test of endurance and engineering. Number 2 engine seized completely at the halfway point, forcing Ziemer to feather the propeller and redistribute power. The bomber descended slowly, losing altitude with each mile. At 5,000 feet, he could see the New Guinea coast. At 2,000 feet, he raised Port Moresby on the emergency frequency. "This is Old 666, declaring emergency. Multiple casualties, structural damage, requesting priority landing and medical. 666, you are cleared for any runway." emergency crews standing by. But Zimmer knew the problem. No hydraulics meant no brakes, no flaps, no landing gear extension. He would have to manually crank the gear down, then land the bomber, a 40,000-pound aircraft, on a short jungle airstrip with no way to slow down except aerodynamic drag and prayer. "Co-pilot," he said to Britain, "I need you in the back. Hand crank the landing gear. It's going to take a few hundred turns." Britain, himself wounded, unbuckled and crawled aft. The bomber descended through 1,000 feet. The airfield was visible, a single runway, surrounded by jungle and construction equipment. Zimmer lined up on final approach, fighting the controls. Without hydraulics, the aircraft felt sluggish, heavy, unresponsive. He compensated with throttle and trim, coaxing her toward the runway. 500 feet. The landing gear groaned down, locked into place. No flaps meant high landing speed and a short runway to work with. 200 feet. Zimmer could see emergency vehicles lining the runway, their crews watching the smoking bomber descend. He reduced power, let the nose drop slightly, bled off speed. 50 feet. Old 666 crossed the runway threshold at 130 miles per hour, 40 miles per hour, faster than a normal landing. Her wheels touched, bounced, touched again. Without brakes, she rolled and rolled, accelerating rather than slowing. Zimmer cut all power, pulled the yoke back to increase drag. The end of the runway was approaching fast, too fast. At the last possible moment, Zimmer ground-looped the bomber, deliberately swinging the tail around in a violent skid. Metal shrieked, tires smoked. The bomber spun 90 degrees and slid sideways into the dirt beyond the runway, coming to rest in a cloud of dust. Silence. Zimmer sat in the cockpit, hands still on the yoke, breathing hard. Around him, old 666 ticked and groaned, settling. 574 impact holes, 2 dead engines, 1 fallen hero. The crew was already moving, helping each other out through the waste door. Medics swarmed the aircraft. Zimmer tried to stand and found his legs wouldn't support him. He had lost more from his injuries than he realized. 2 medics pulled him from the cockpit, laid him on a stretcher. "The bombardier," Zimmer said. "Sergeant Sarnowski. We know, sir," one medic said quietly. "We'll take care of him." Zimmer closed his eyes. The mission was complete. The photographs were intact. And old 666, the cursed bomber that no one wanted, had flown through hell and brought her crew home. Well, most of them. The photographs from that mission provided critical intelligence for Allied operations in the Solomon Islands. The planned operation on Bougainville's airfields proceeded on schedule, with significantly reduced American losses because planners knew exactly where to strike. Captain J. Zimmer Jr. and Staff Sergeant Joseph Sarnowski were both awarded the Medal of Honor, the only instance in United States military history where an entire bomber crew received the nation's highest decoration for a single mission. Sarnowski's was posthumous. He was 29 years old. The other crew members received Distinguished Service Crosses, Silver Stars, and Purple Hearts. Every man was wounded. Every man had fought beyond the point where most would have surrendered or failed. Old 666 never flew combat again. Her airframe was too damaged, her structural integrity compromised beyond repair. She was stripped for parts and eventually scrapped. But her legend lived on, the cursed bomber that became a fortress, flown by misfits who refused to accept fate's verdict. Lieutenant Commander Yoshio Fukui filed a combat report noting, quote, "Unprecedented defensive firepower from enemy bomber, losses unacceptable." Japanese tactics shifted after that engagement, becoming more cautious when attacking lone reconnaissance aircraft. The mathematics of war are brutal and precise. For every mission, there is a cost. For every victory, a price. Old 666 and her eager beavers paid it in injuries, in pain, in the life of a bombardier who would never go home. But they also proved something essential about warfare, about humans, about the strange alchemy that turns ordinary people into legends. Give desperate men a hopeless machine, and sometimes, they forge miracles. The cursed bomber flew into 20 zeros and came home. That's not luck, that's defiance.